The chamber of the Galactic Council was built to impress. Its walls curved high above like the inside of a vast shell, decorated with glowing lines of energy that pulsed gently, showing the unity of 100 civilizations. Thousands of eyes, tentacles, lenses, and other alien senses turned toward the center stage, where the peace table stretched in a long oval. At one end sat the elder races, ancient in wisdom and heavy with tradition. At the other end sat the newest guests, the humans of Earth. For months, representatives of every major world had gathered here, hoping to end years of conflict that had shaken the galaxy. At least that was the claim. But as the days dragged on, it became clear that most of the council viewed this meeting not as peace, but as victory. Humans saw it differently. Ambassador Elias Kane sat at the human seat, his face calm, his posture straight. He wore the dark uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, its silver edges catching the glow of the chamber. To his left sat Admiral Ruth Delgado, silent but sharp-eyed, her military presence a quiet reminder that humanity had not come unarmed. Behind them, aides and translators whispered notes, their screens filled with text and symbols from a dozen alien languages. Across the table, a being of scales and golden armor leaned forward. The Sarathi were one of the older species, tall and snake-like, with voices that hissed even through translators. Humans have shown stubbornness, the Sarathi delegate said, but stubbornness must yield to order. The Council offers protection. The Council offers stability. All we ask is acceptance. The words drifted through the chamber, received by hundreds of species. Many nodded, their features unreadable to human eyes, but their agreement clear. Ambassador Kane did not reply at once. He let the silence stretch. It was a silence filled with history. Wars fought in the void. Battles humans had not started but had survived, and treaties written with words that often broke as easily as glass. Finally, Kane's voice rose, steady and deep. Protection is not peace. Stability is not freedom. Earth did not fight to hand its future away. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some aliens flickered with surprise, others with irritation. The Council's speaker, a shimmering being of light known as Orali, floated higher to restore order. The humans misunderstand, Orali said, their voice soft yet resonant. The proposal honors them. Under Council guidance, Earth will prosper. No threats, no wars, no uncertainty. In time, perhaps, a greater role. Admiral Delgado's jaw tightened. She had fought on the borders where Council protection often meant ignoring attacks until it was too late. She had seen colonies burn while aid arrived too late to matter. She whispered to Kane, but her words carried, "They don't see us as equals. They see us as children." Kane raised a hand slightly, signaling patience. Then he leaned forward, his eyes sweeping across the table. Humanity did not cross the stars to bow. We came to join, to share, to learn, and to build together. Yet what is written here? He tapped the glowing text hovering over the table. Strips Earth of sovereignty. It calls us a protectorate. That is not partnership. That is chains painted to look like gold. The word struck the chamber like a shockwave. Some delegates whispered furiously, their translators struggling to keep pace. A few looked away, embarrassed. But most sat still, their silence carrying the weight of agreement with the Council's design. The Clarions, delicate beings with wings of crystal, spoke next. Their voice rang like bells. Humanity must understand. Young species cannot be trusted with such power. Your wars spread quickly. Your innovations are dangerous. The Council cannot risk chaos. Ambassador Kane's face remained calm, but Admiral Delgado clenched her fists under the table. Humans had heard such arguments before, from empires on Earth who believed only the civilized deserved freedom. Kane stood. His movement was slow, deliberate, impossible to ignore. His voice carried not anger but iron certainty. If you cannot see us as equals, then you will not see us at all. Every human in the chamber rose with him. Chairs pushed back, papers gathered, screens shut down. For a heartbeat, the galaxy's greatest assembly stared in disbelief as humanity turned its back. The speaker's light pulsed frantically. You cannot walk away. The Council decides the fate of all its members. Admiral Delgado's voice cut like a blade. Then perhaps we are not members. The humans walked together, their boots echoing across the polished floor. No guards stopped them. No allies spoke. Only silence followed, heavy and stunned. At the edge of the chamber, Ambassador Kane paused. He turned once more, meeting the eyes or equivalents of those who had dismissed humanity. You believe we are weak because we are young. You believe we must kneel because we have not seen as many stars. But remember this, when the storms came, we endured. When the wars burned, we rebuilt. And when the void called, we answered, not because we were ready, but because we refused to wait. His words lingered long after the humans left. That night, the council was restless. In the private halls where diplomats whispered truths too dangerous for the main floor, worry began to spread. Humanity had not been broken. Humanity had not begged. They had walked away, and that act carried more power than any signature on the peace proposal. Among the elder species, some dismissed it. They are young. They will return, they said. But others were not so sure. They had seen the way humans fought, fierce, unpredictable, unyielding. They had seen the way humans adapted to every hardship. And they had seen something else that day, something unsettling. Humans had walked out united. For humanity itself, the walkout was not a defeat. It was a line drawn in the stars. On Earth, the images spread within hours. Their ambassador standing tall, their delegation leaving with dignity. To many, it felt like the first true step toward respect. Children watched the broadcasts and felt pride. Workers in orbital stations spoke of it with quiet determination. Soldiers on distant colonies whispered that finally, someone had said aloud what they all believed. Humanity would not bow. The council had built a grand table for peace. But in their arrogance, they had broken it, and the galaxy would soon learn the price of underestimating humanity. The Galactic Council chamber had fallen silent after the humans left. What was meant to be a ceremony of peace had ended with footsteps echoing across the polished floor, and the sharp crack of a door closing behind humanity's delegation. In the stillness that followed, many tried to reassure themselves. The humans will return, hissed the Sarathi delegate, coils tightening around their seat. They are too small to survive alone. Their anger is a fire, chimed the Clerian envoy, wings trembling faintly. It will burn out quickly. Then they will crawl back. The Speaker of the Council, Orali, pulsed faintly in agreement. Yes, it is always the same with young races. Pride first, reason after. Yet even as they spoke, a current of unease rippled through the assembly. For the first time in decades, a species had walked away from the Council's table. Not expelled, not destroyed, but leaving of their own will. That choice was something none of the elder races had expected. The human withdrawal. The withdrawal was swift and complete. Within a single cycle, Earth recalled every ambassador from Council space. Human ships that had once patrolled trade routes alongside allies returned to their own borders. Messages once filled with offers of cooperation grew short, then silent. On distant colonies, Council representatives found themselves politely escorted out, their authority no longer recognized. Human leaders, both political and military, issued a simple statement that spread across the stars. Earth will stand apart. We will speak again when respect is offered, not control. To many in the Council, it seemed almost laughable at first. A young species barely a century into spaceflight, declaring independence from the galaxy's greatest coalition. It sounded like arrogance beyond measure. But days turned into weeks and humanity did not return. Trade convoys that once relied on Earth's jump relays began to suffer. Those relays, built with human engineering, had been maintained with precision. Without human oversight, minor malfunctions became major delays. Pirates, sensing opportunity, crept into regions once made safe by human patrols. Reports trickled in. A Council freighter attacked near the Arrow system, another hijacked along the Torlin route. Normally, human response fleets would have driven the raiders away. Now there was only silence and fear began to take root. Whispers among worlds in the Council's great cities, whispers grew. Traders muttered in markets that business had slowed. Captains complained that their journeys took longer, costlier without human-built shortcuts. Some even admitted that, for all their stubbornness, humans had been fair partners in trade. On neutral worlds, smaller species wondered aloud whether the Council had made a mistake. The humans only asked to be treated as equals, some said. Why was that so difficult? The elder species dismissed such talk, but unease continued to spread. Even those who had mocked humanity began to notice their absence like the sudden loss of a stabilizing weight. life behind closed borders. While the council debated, humanity was busy. Behind their sealed borders, Earth and its colonies thrived. Freed from endless negotiations, they turned their attention inward. Scientists who once spent years waiting for council approval now worked freely, designing new star drives and medical systems. Farmers on distant colonies shared techniques without interference, creating harvests that fed millions. The human fleets that had once been spread thin across council space now gathered at their own borders, disciplined and alert. They did not expand, they did not provoke, but they stood ready. To the council's spies, this looked less like retreat and more like preparation. In every human broadcast, one message repeated: unity. No longer divided by council pressure, humanity had grown closer than ever. Earth and its colonies spoke with one voice, and that voice was firm. The council's first regrets. Weeks later, the council met again to discuss the situation. The chamber buzzed with uneasy energy. The trade networks weaken without their relays, said a merchant delegate, mandibles clacking in agitation. Profits fall by half. The pirates spread faster than expected, growled a military commander from the Turvan species. We cannot patrol every border. Human ships once did this work. Still others remained stubborn. They will come back, the Sarathi insisted. They cannot survive without us. Let them starve, let them beg. Then they will understand the cost of pride. But some were not so sure. The Clarion envoy tilted their crystal wings thoughtfully. Perhaps it is not they who will starve, they murmured. That quiet remark hung in the air, unchallenged, signs of strength soon after. New reports reached the council, disturbing ones. Human traders, once absent, had reappeared on fringe worlds. They came not with requests for council approval, but with their own contracts, direct and fair. Many smaller species, tired of council bureaucracy, accepted gladly. Goods moved quickly, prices dropped, and stability returned wherever humans traded. Council officials protested, but the humans only smiled politely. We do not interfere with your laws, they said. We simply offer another choice. And choice was powerful. In time, rumors spread of human exploration fleets venturing into uncharted regions, building alliances beyond council space. Where the council's influence waned, humanity's presence grew. The quiet realization, in the council's inner chambers, the elder races began to see what was happening. The humans had not weakened. They had not begged. They had grown stronger, free from the council's grasp. For centuries, the council had assumed its unity was unbreakable. But now cracks appeared. Member species argued more often, disputes flared without human mediation, and old rivalries began to rise again. It was then that some council leaders admitted the unthinkable. Perhaps we need them more than they need us. A different kind of fear. Not everyone agreed. Many still clung to pride. But in private conversations, in whispers that spread through the council's great halls, a new kind of fear began to take root. It was not fear of human weapons, though they had proven formidable. It was not fear of human expansion, though they moved swiftly. It was fear of what humanity represented, a young species that refused to kneel, a people who would rather stand alone than be treated as less, a civilization that turned rejection into strength. The council had seen many species rise and fall, but rarely one that carried such unyielding will. The weight of silence. When the council chamber met again months later, the emptiness of the human seat felt heavier than ever. Delegates avoided looking at it, yet their eyes were drawn there all the same. The speaker's voice carried as always, but the words rang hollow. Without humanity's presence, the chamber felt incomplete, its unity an illusion. In corridors after the meetings, envoys whispered nervously. Some urged reconciliation, others warned against letting pride blind them further. But the decision remained delayed, caught in endless debate. Meanwhile, humanity moved forward step by steady step, their absence speaking louder than any declaration. And in the shadows of the council's great halls, regret began to take root, quiet at first but growing stronger with every passing day. For the first time in its long history, the Galactic Council began to wonder if it had made a mistake too large to undo. The galaxy was vast, but balance was fragile. For centuries, the Galactic Council had been the weight that kept the stars steady. It did not rule with weapons alone, but with diplomacy, with rules and with the appearance of unity. Most species believed that no matter the storm, the Council would hold the center together. But that belief began to fade the moment humanity left the chamber. Old fires. Awaken at first, the changes seemed small. A few trade routes slowed, a few border patrols weakened. Yet within months, cracks appeared across Council space. In the Outer Rim, two rival species, the Vothari and the Meriden, clashed over a chain of resource-rich asteroids. Before, human patrol ships had kept both sides from escalation, their presence enough to enforce uneasy peace. Now, without those patrols, the first skirmishes broke out. In the Arat system, a long-frozen dispute over mining rights flared again. Blame shifted quickly. The humans were the ones who calmed us before, said one Meriden leader in frustration. Now the Council just sends words, not action. The Council dispatched mediators, but the dispute spread faster than their ships could travel. Old grudges, once softened by human diplomacy and quick response fleets, returned to life like sleeping embers fanned into flame. Fleets without edge. The Council had always maintained fleets, but they were designed more for display than true war. Ships gleamed with banners and bright colors, symbols of unity. They were large, intimidating, but slow and predictable. When pirates began striking harder at trade lanes, the Council tried to respond. Their fleets launched with ceremony, their commanders confident. But the pirates, quick and desperate, darted away before the fleets arrived. Council admirals grew frustrated. "They fight without honor," one declared. "They fight to survive," another muttered quietly, remembering human strategies. Human fleets had always been different. Smaller, faster, built not to impress but to adapt. Their tactics had been unpredictable, their commanders unafraid to take risks. Without them, the Council realized too late that its fleets were blunt instruments in a war that required sharp edges. The market's tremble trade was the lifeblood of the Council, and here the absence of humanity cut the deepest. Human-built jump relays had been scattered across the stars. Efficient, simple, reliable, these gates had turned weeks of travel into days. Now, with no human crews to maintain them, failures increased. Travel slowed, costs rose, and merchants grew desperate. In the markets of SCIFI-Prime, one of the galaxy's greatest trading hubs, voices rose in anger. "Human routes were fair," shouted a trader with iridescent scales. "At least their fees were clear," added another. "Now the Council takes and takes while pirates take the rest." Soon, independent merchants began to seek out human traders in secret. The humans, cautious but confident, offered contracts directly, no Council permission required. Goods moved again, faster and cheaper than before. And for the first time, the Council realized something dangerous. Humanity was becoming an alternative, not an ally, a whispered warning within the Council's central city, hidden in a quiet chamber. A meeting took place. Delegates from smaller species gathered in secret, far from the ears of the elder races. They spoke softly, their voices heavy with worry. "The humans do not return. They trade with us directly and they are fair. They treat us as equals, not as servants." The delegates looked at one another, fear mixing with hope. To speak against the Council was dangerous. But more and more they found themselves asking the same question. Had humanity been right to walk away? Humanity's quiet growth. Meanwhile, within their closed borders, humans advanced. On Mars, engineers tested new engines that pulsed with experimental energy sources. On the colony of Vega 3, scientists perfected farming techniques that turned deserts into fields of grain. On the ocean world of Pacifica, human fleets trained in silence, their movements hidden but precise. Admiral Ruth Delgado stood on the bridge of the human flagship Resolute, watching her fleet maneuver. Ships darted in and out of formations, weaving patterns like dancers in the void. She smiled faintly. "They think we are gone," she said. "Let them believe it. Every day they grow weaker, and every day we grow stronger." The humans did not seek conquest, but they prepared, always prepared. Cracks in the Council itself began to fracture. In the chamber, debates grew heated. Some demanded reconciliation with humanity, others refused, claiming pride was more important than compromise. The speaker tried to calm the storm, but their light flickered with strain. "The humans cannot dictate to us," the Sarathi delegate hissed. "They already do," replied a quieter voice. "Without speaking, without firing a shot. They shape us more than we shape them." The council chamber fell silent at those words, for many knew them to be true. The first defection. The breaking point came when the small world of Talaris announced it would sign a direct treaty with Earth. Talaris had long been ignored within the council, its request drowned out by larger voices. But the humans had listened. They offered trade, defense, and most importantly, respect. When the announcement came, the council roared in anger. Delegates shouted, threats flew, but the Talarians remained firm. "We are tired of waiting for scraps," their leader declared. "The humans offer us dignity. That is more than you ever gave." The chamber fell into chaos. For the first time in history, a member openly chose humanity over the council. The spiral of weakness, one defection became 2, then 3. Each time, the council grew weaker. Old rivalries worsened. Species that once cooperated now fought for territory, blaming each other for losses. The humans, meanwhile, did not boast. They simply worked. Each treaty signed, each partnership made, added quietly to their strength. Across the stars, the pattern became clear. Where the council's influence faltered, humanity's presence grew. A lesson in silence. One evening, in the grand city of the council's homeworld, the speaker walked alone through the chamber. The human seat sat empty, but to the speaker's eyes it was heavier than any throne. "We thought them young," the speaker whispered to the silence. "We thought time would break them. Instead, they break us with nothing but silence." For a long moment, the speaker simply stood, watching the empty seat glow faintly in the dim chamber. It felt like a warning. It felt like judgment. The shifting balance, the galaxy was changing. Everyone could feel it. The council, once proud and untouchable, now fought to hold itself together. Their fleets faltered, their trade slowed, their authority questioned, and humanity thrived. Their borders strong, their people united, their allies growing. They had not fired a single shot, yet they shifted the balance of power with nothing more than their will to stand apart. The whispers of regret had grown into something larger. Now they carried not only sorrow but fear. Fear that the council had not only lost humanity, but lost the future itself. For in the quiet strength of Earth and its colonies, the galaxy saw a truth that could no longer be denied. Humanity was no longer a small voice in the stars. They were becoming something greater, something the council could not ignore, and the balance of power had already begun to tilt. The humans had closed their borders. To the council it looked like retreat. To humanity it was rebirth. Behind the guarded lines of their fleets, Earth and her colonies turned inward. For the first time in decades, there were no council debates slowing decisions, no treaties tying their hands, and no elder races telling them what they could or could not do. Humanity was free. Free to think, free to build, and free to decide its own path. And in that silence of isolation, humanity learned. Unity forged in fire on Earth, leaders of every nation sat at the same table. In the past, humanity had been divided, borders, rivalries, arguments that stretched for centuries. But the memory of the council's arrogance, the sting of being dismissed, had given them a single purpose. President Arya Morgan of Earth's Unified Council stood before the World Assembly and said the words that echoed across every colony. "They will not respect us unless we stand together. We are not Earth, Mars, Vega, or Pacifica. We are humanity. One voice, one people, one destiny." And for once in history, the words held. Nations that had once argued now shared resources. Colonies that had competed now cooperated. Humanity, tested by war and insult, was stronger than it had ever been. Science without chains on Mars. The laboratories hummed with new energy. Scientists who had once spent years begging the council for approval now moved without limits. Dr. Yara Singh, lead engineer of the Red Horizon project, watched her team ignite the first test of a new jump drive. The prototype shuddered, then vanished into space, reappearing minutes later at a relay far beyond the test field. "It worked," Yara whispered, awe in her eyes. "Faster than any council gate, independent ours." Her team erupted in cheers. For years, the council had blocked such research, claiming it was too risky for a young race. Now in isolation, humanity was free to take risks, and their progress leapt forward like wildfire. On Pacifica, ocean farms grew vast fields of kelp that could feed millions. On Vega 3, desert harvesters created fertile soil where once there had been only dust. Everywhere, humans used their stubborn creativity to solve problems the Council had long ignored. The watchful fleets, while scientists built the future, soldiers guarded the present. Admiral Ruth Delgado stood on the bridge of the Resolute, her eyes scanning the stars. Around her, the fleet moved in disciplined silence, their ships smaller than the Council's giants but sharper, faster, and more unpredictable. "Hold the line," she told her captains. "We don't provoke. We don't intrude. But if they come to test us, remind them why we endured." The humans had no desire for conquest, but they remembered every insult and every battle fought alone. Their fleets became guardians, shields that warned the galaxy humanity would never bow again. The Council's struggle. While humanity thrived, the Council faltered. Old rivalries grew into wars. The Vathari and Meridan conflict spread into neighboring systems. The Council sent fleets, but they were too slow, too ceremonial. Battles dragged on, victories hollow and losses heavy. Merchants cried out as pirates grew bolder. Without human patrols, the trade lanes were dangerous and profits collapsed. Entire economies shook, and people whispered that the Council was no longer able to protect them. In the chamber, debates turned bitter. Delegates shouted, alliances cracked, and the speaker's once bright glow dimmed with exhaustion. "We are losing control," whispered the Clerian envoy, their crystal wings trembling. "We lost it the day the humans walked out," another replied grimly. Spies in the shadows desperate for answers, the Council sent spies into human space. They expected to find chaos, disunity, perhaps even collapse. What they found instead was troubling. Reports came back of thriving cities, bustling trade, and fleets more disciplined than ever. Colonies that had once struggled under Council neglect now stood proud, united under Earth's banner. One spy's report shook the chamber. "They are not breaking. They are growing. They move faster, they think faster. They build what we forbid, and they succeed." The word sent a ripple of fear through the delegates. Humanity, left alone, was becoming stronger than ever. A lesson in dignity for the smaller species of the galaxy. The lesson was even clearer. On the world of Talari, once overlooked by the Council, humans had signed a direct treaty. They traded fairly, defended honestly, and most of all listened. Talarians, long treated as background voices, found themselves respected for the first time. "They treat us as equals," said Talaris's leader proudly. "That is all we ever asked." More worlds followed. Quietly, cautiously, but steadily, they reached out to humanity. The Council protested, but the smaller species no longer cared. Respect mattered more than ceremony. And everywhere the lesson spread. Humanity had chosen isolation not out of weakness, but out of dignity. And dignity was something the Council had forgotten. The Council's realization in the Great Chamber. The arguments grew endless. Some called for humility, for new talks with humanity. Others demanded punishment, claiming the humans were a threat. The speaker listened in silence, their glow dimming further. Finally, they spoke. "You do not see. We thought ourselves teachers, but it is we who are learning. The humans showed us that unity is not control, that respect is not a gift, it is a choice. And we chose arrogance." The chamber fell quiet. For the first time, the Council felt shame. Humanity's voice on Earth, Ambassador Elias Kane, the man who had led the walkout, addressed humanity's unified council. His voice carried across every colony, every ship, every outpost. "They believed we would break without them," Kane said. "They believed we would beg. Instead, we have grown. We have built. We have remembered who we are." He paused, his gaze firm. "The Council is learning slowly, painfully, that strength is not in size or age. Strength is in dignity, and we will never give ours away." The speech ignited hope across human space. Farmers, workers, scientists, soldiers, each felt the truth of his words. Humanity was no longer a minor voice in the galaxy. They were becoming a force the stars could not ignore. Lessons in isolation. In the months that followed, the Council watched as humanity thrived, and the galaxy around them unraveled. Trade slowed, wars spread, and unity crumbled. Meanwhile, humans stood tall, their silence more powerful than any threat. For the Council, it was a bitter lesson. They had dismissed humanity as reckless, dangerous, and unworthy of equality. Now they saw the truth. Humanity's refusal to bow was not weakness, but strength, and that strength, born in isolation, was reshaping the galaxy. The Council had once believed humanity needed them. But in the quiet years that followed, the galaxy learned the truth. It was the Council that needed humanity. And with every passing day, regret grew heavier in their hearts. For the first time in ages, the Council's future no longer felt certain, and the lesson humanity had given them, though painful, was clear. Respect denied would always return as regret. The stars were quiet over Earth. For months, humanity had maintained its watchful stance, silent but strong. Trade routes hummed under human management. Colonies flourished and fleets moved with precision across the void. Humanity had not sought revenge, had not launched strikes against the Council, and had not interfered with the galaxy beyond their borders. They had waited, and the Galactic Council had noticed. The Council in crisis back on the Council's homeworld. The chamber was in chaos. Once a place of order and ceremony, it now echoed with arguments, accusations, and rising fear. "The humans are stronger than ever," admitted the Clerian envoy, wings trembling. "They did not strike, yet we fall apart without them," the Sarathi delegate hissed in anger. "They are still young. They cannot sustain themselves alone. We must force them back." But voices like the Clerians grew louder, more persuasive. Evidence was undeniable. Trade routes collapsed without human maintenance. Smaller species now chose to work with Earth directly, and Council fleets struggled to enforce law where humans had once kept peace. Orally, the speaker, floated higher, their light dim and flickering. For the first time, they could not command silence with mere presence. "We underestimated them," Orally admitted. "We thought ourselves untouchable. We have failed in pride and in judgment. Perhaps it is time we learn." A humble approach, the Council decided to act, not with threat, not with force, but with humility. Delegations traveled to human space, their ships unarmed except for standard protocols. For the first time, the Council arrived with no grand speeches, no condescending proposals, no demands for submission. They came simply to speak. Earth's orbital station awaited them. Ambassador Kane and Admiral Delgado stood on the observation deck, watching the Council vessels arrive in formation. The humans made no move toward ceremony or greeting. They did not bow, they did not signal deference. They only waited, calm, strong, united. As the Council delegation docked, a whisper spread among them. "We are here because they allow us to be." Humanity's terms in the conference chamber of the station, humans filled one side of the table. The Council, once proud, now looked small in comparison, not in size but in humility. Ambassador Kane spoke first, his tone calm but firm. "You come to us humbled. That is the first step. But let me remind you why humanity left. Not because we desired isolation, but because we were treated as less than equals." Admiral Delgado stepped forward. "We do not seek control. We do not seek punishment. We seek respect, and we demand equality in any discussion. Anything less is meaningless." The Council members listened, their silence heavier than any applause. Orally finally spoke, light flickering. "You are correct. We acted out of arrogance. We assumed youth meant weakness, submission, or ignorance. All three were wrong, and now we see our mistake." Kane nodded once. "Then let us speak. Let us rebuild trust, not as juniors and elders, but as equals. If this is to be peace, it must be shared, not dictated." First steps toward unity. Negotiations began slowly. Every word was carefully considered. Humans insisted on fairness, insisting that all species, regardless of age or power, had equal voice. The Council, chastened by months of failure without humanity, agreed. They no longer dominated the discussion, nor did they hide behind ceremony. For the first time in decades, the chamber functioned as a true council rather than a stage for pride. Outside the chamber, humans continued to manage trade, protect colonies, and explore new regions. Their fleets did not vanish. Their influence did not shrink. But their approach remained steady and dignified, reminding all who observed that strength was measured not by conquest, but by unity and respect. Smaller worlds flourish. Smaller species that had once been ignored by the Council found their voices heard at last. Human oversight ensured that trade and resources were distributed fairly, not for gain but for growth and prosperity. Talari, the first world to sign a direct treaty with Earth, became a symbol of what the galaxy could achieve when respect was prioritized. Other worlds followed, often with Council approval but under human guidance. Even the elders learned. The Sarathi, initially hissing in disdain, came to appreciate that human fairness stabilized conflict far more effectively than their old methods. The Clerians, whose voices had trembled in warning, recognized that cooperation and listening were stronger tools than coercion. The galaxy, slowly, began to knit itself together again. Lessons written in the stars' humanity's withdrawal had been more than a protest. It had been a lesson. The Council realized, painfully, that power without respect was fragile. Control achieved through fear or arrogance could never last. And patience, coupled with dignity, often yielded more than any weapon ever could. Within human space, life continued. Scientists experimented, soldiers trained, and colonies expanded, all under the guiding principle of equality and respect. Trade flourished, alliances strengthened, and humanity's influence grew not through force, but through example. Even Council spies who had once come expecting weakness returned with reports praising human ingenuity, discipline, and fairness. Slowly, grudging admiration replaced fear in their hearts. The first new treaty after months of careful negotiation, humanity and the Council signed the first treaty on fully equal terms. No species was above another. No single voice dominated. Decisions were made collectively, but humanity had earned the right to speak first on matters of shared interest. When the treaty was broadcast across the galaxy, the reactions were powerful. Smaller species celebrated. Colonies cheered. Traders welcomed the return of safe, fair commerce. And within the Council, even the most stubborn elders admitted that the galaxy had been righted, though not without cost to pride. Ambassador Kane summed it up. Peace without respect is temporary. Respect without equality is meaningless. Now we have both. Let us not waste it. A changed council. The chamber of the Galactic Council, once filled with prideful echoes and ceremonies, now felt different. Its halls were quieter, not because of fear, but because of understanding. Humans no longer needed to prove their worth with defiance. Their example had taught the galaxy that dignity, unity, and fairness were stronger than arrogance. The Council, chastened and wiser, began to function again. But always the empty human seat before their arrival had served as a reminder. Misjudging a young, determined race could almost destroy them all. Now, with humanity's return, the galaxy had learned that lesson well. Humanity's silent strength back on Earth. Kane, Delgado, and the leaders of the colonies watched as council ships departed the station. Now friends and allies rather than distant rulers. Delgado spoke softly, almost to herself. They came thinking we needed them. They leave realizing they needed us. Kane smiled faintly, and we never demanded it. We only asked for respect. That is the quietest and strongest weapon we have. Across human space, fleets glided between stars, colonies grew, and trade routes buzzed with life. Humanity had not sought conquest, but through dignity, patience, and unity, they had reshaped the galaxy, and in every heart, every mind, the lesson echoed. Underestimate humanity at your own risk. The galaxy's new dawn, the story of humanity and the Council became legend, told in whispers across stars and informal lessons across academies. It was a tale of patience, of quiet strength, of dignity standing firm against arrogance. The Council had almost lost the galaxy by underestimating a young, determined race. But humanity had reminded them of a simple truth. Equality and respect were worth more than fear or power. And as the new era began, with humans and the Council working together on equal terms, the galaxy finally understood. True strength was not in domination, but in unity, respect, and the courage to stand tall. Humanity had withdrawn once, but in their absence they had shown that the galaxy itself could be shaped, not by pride, not by force, but by the quiet, unyielding power of dignity. The stars, long witnesses to countless wars and empires, now shone on a new truth. Humanity's place among them was not given, it was earned, and it was unbreakable.